on The Current War, the film about electricity in 2017, but also the Screenlife films Unfriended, Dark Web, and Profile, both more recent productions in 2018. In the first half of the session, we're going to run for our normal time. This week we did a slightly shorter version last week because we were pitching, but we'll run to a full length this time. We'll actually talk for about an hour or so, and then we'll have questions. Then we'll have a break, and then in the second half, Nick's got a presentation for us again this week, and we will also be doing some work in breakout rooms if the technology holds up. We're going to get into rooms and talk about the pitches from last week. So I'll hand you over to Majd.
Hi everyone, my name is Majd. Thank you so much for having me. I'm calling you from Los Angeles. I run basically Timur's and Baslo's business here in LA. Oversee all the productions of our movies and TV series here. I would love to tell you more about the Screenlife format, how we deal with it every day, how we work with it every day. It's such a unique format, and it's just every day we come up with new ways of telling stories that we have not done before. And I believe you guys have already written your pitches for POC, right? For the proof of concept. And I know it's this very important phase to go to the next step to produce the proof of concept, because this is such an important part of the process. But before we go into the whole proof of concept side of things, I wanted to kind of point out the main things that we work with a lot of writers, directors, and we always get a lot of pitches and whatnot. And there's a lot of things and elements that we always flag because they don't work properly, because we've tested them before, because we've tried them with other projects, but they haven't been working properly. So I'll give you a few of those as an example. The first one is characters, right? A lot of pitches that we get and scripts and whatnot, it's always two types of characters. It's either a computer programmer or influencer, right? Because it's clear hacker will use, or programmer will use a computer, influencer will use a computer, so the story will be very easily told. But this sometimes becomes a bit too cliche, too overused, because you can think of more characters beyond just influencer or sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, before influencer. And so there's more characters that we've always been exploring and always trying to do movies about. For example, there's like moderator, right? There's like, Facebook moderators, Twitter moderators that have such a very unique character because they see a lot of the, uncensored content that gets posted on Facebook, and they get psychological treatments as well. And Facebook funds their whole psychological and therapy and whatnot. And so it's a very interesting character to try and explore and see the perspective from. Another type of a character is if someone is working in the call center, right? Or if someone is working as social media manager, right? These kind of characters, it goes beyond just showing an influencer with Instagram and Facebook, and kind of tries to widen your world a bit more than just showing social media stuff or hacking stuff. But then from another perspective, when you think of putting a hacker personality or computer programmer personality, it doesn't usually work in Screenlife format, because you're not going to show an audience code being typed on the screen for no longer than 2 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. And so that's always become a question. Yes, it's interesting to see hacker's story, hacker's perspective, hacker's background, or computer programmer's background, but it's not very interesting to see code being typed on screen when you don't understand any of it at all. That's the first thing about characters. Another thing is the concept, right? The concept is a very important part as well, is because I read scripts every day, I read pitches every day, and one thing that people always tend to forget is the difference between, let's say, found footage movie and a Screenlife movie. found footage is, over the past year since the pandemic has begun, we saw just a large influx of people making Zoom movies, right? So there's a movie came out on Shutter called Host, which was an hour and a half film of just, a Zoom call, or the other movies that are just basically taking place on a Zoom, right? And we try to, with our movies, we try to go beyond than just showing talking heads, right? Because we're trying to show other types of ways of communication that doesn't just require us talking over FaceTime or a computer, sorry, or Skype or other web conferencing software. And so that's always becomes tricky, because you're either gonna try and tell a story through a camera, or you're trying to tell a story through the different ways that we communicate or use our computers, right? What I mean by that is, for example, we get a pitch for a horror movie or a script for a horror movie. The concept is, let's say a girl going on a hike, and she finds a cult in as she goes on her hike. Um, the whole script is the blogger or the person that's going on a hike is literally just filming herself the whole time from beginning to end as an Instagram live story, right? And so you're basically watching her camera from her phone the whole time. It always raises the question, if someone is, especially in a horror movie, if someone is in danger, why would they be still filming with their phone, right? You always have to justify the reason that you're using the phone or the camera for the audience to accept that. And so that script was always struggled with the fact that it just felt like a found footage, right? A girl is going up on a hike, she's filming herself the whole time. There's no other ways for us to see what's going on beyond that world, and that's, I think, 90% of the scripts that we get is always just conversations over FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, and then we will just add the second layer, which is the Screenlife elements, right? And so when we come to Screenlife elements, is basically the different apps that we can use, the different ways that we can tell stories that just doesn't, just rely us on camera, right? We can go tell a story way beyond that, because you can tell a lot about a person's character just from seeing his computer. For example, if you go on my computer right now, you go on my Google search history, and the first thing that pops up would be, for example, I don't know, how to commit suicide. And you'd immediately think, without knowing anything about me, that I'm going through a lot, right? But you don't know me at all. You only saw that one Google search history, right? So these are the type of elements that always try to show in our films, because they tell a lot about our character, right? Whether it's the messaging side of things, right? If we're messaging our loved ones or messaging someone we're fighting with, sometimes we've all been in that situation where we write a long stream of text where we're, ranting about something, and then we change our mind last minute and we delete everything because we just decide to do it another day, And so that shows the emotion side of it, us hesitating, us always changing our mind and whatnot. And that's always important to flag or show in these films, because it shows more of engagement. And so far, with the movies we've done, with the movies we've tested, we've done both. We've done the whole found footage side and the whole, Screenlife side, and it's always been proven that. And with the surveys that we've done, the focus group testings, they always liked more seeing our actions on screen, right? Because it makes the audience feel like we're in their shoes, right? And so that's the main thing about the concept. Another thing is, never try to apply the format on the story, right? It's got to go the other way around, because sometimes, we get a submission and it's this 115 page script. You're reading it, and then at some point it says, FaceTime camera, someone calling you. You answer the call, and then the rest of the script, the rest of the 50 pages, is the person on FaceTime camera, and he's jumping and running and racing and explosions and all that stuff. And you're like, how am I seeing all of this? Like, which lens are we? Are we all seeing in someone's phone as he's running the rest of the movie? And so that's because people tend to come up with the story, and then they try to just put the Screenlife format on top to make it, applicable to the format. But it never works, because it's always raises a lot of questions. A lot of always makes you think, wait, this does not make sense. Why am I seeing this all on a FaceTime camera? And also the framing of it all doesn't work at all either. And lastly is we always try to do a lot of research about our characters when it comes to the type of apps that we use. There's one project that we've been developing for a while, and it's a psychological horror story, and we're following an old woman's character, but we're seeing everything through her screens. And it's an interesting concept because we had to do a lot of research and see what apps do older people use, how did they use them, how they engage with them, and that helped us kind of like curate the world of our character and figure out what exactly. Well, obviously we're not gonna have TikTok and Snapchat as apps, but we will have Facebook. Facebook is used mainly for a lot of older audience. So we always try to broaden that world and see what apps do these types of people use, whether which demographics, and then we try to see how many we can use to be able to just go beyond than just FaceTime and Facebook and Twitter. We always try to show more than that. In the case of the hiking story, we use some hiking trail apps, we use some AR apps, we use all those just to visualize it more and make it even more make the project even more creative. That's the main kind of notes I wanted or pointers I wanted to give on the concept and character side. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand virtually, I guess. Otherwise, I can just move forward and talk about POC. Cool. Proof of concept. First things first about proof of concept. It's my favorite part of the development process because this is the opportunity for you to try and showcase your concept in the most creative way and most attractive way. And we've done these proof of concepts for every project that we worked on. It started a few years ago when we were doing searching on Unfriended, and searching when we did the proof of concept for it. It was done in the form of a trailer, right? Other projects, they were more done in the form of scenes, a certain scene taken out of the script, and we would film the POC, proof of concept, on it. From practice, it definitely has proven to us that trailers do work better, although they're harder to make because when you make a trailer without having a script, it's kind of hard to come up with ideas. But it's definitely works better because you're always trying to show the whole concept and the whole idea and sell it to the audience or to the investors or to whoever you're showing the proof of concept for. So trailer is usually what works best, but if we were to choose a scene of some sort, the scene would have to be very specific enough for you to be able to sell the concept and sell the idea, and explain why is the story being told on a computer screen or mobile screen, right? That's the main two things that you're gonna have to show in your proof of concept is why is story being told in such format, and at the same time, what is the story? And so from the way we do these proof of concepts and the way that this has proven to be very successful for us to make them quick and understand how these work is we tend to reverse engineer all of our projects. So what I mean by that is we go to edit those, the feature film or the proof of concept or whatever it is first before we shoot anything. So let's say you have a script already for the proof of concept. We go into the edit first. You film temporary footage with your friends or colleagues, and you place those footage as temporary footage into the cut, and then you edit as much as you want. You see what works, what doesn't work, and that's kind of your opportunity to try and see what things work, what things that don't work. Maybe this beat doesn't work. Maybe that idea that you thought worked well on script doesn't work well on screen. That gives you the opportunity to be able to change all of that and modify all of that in the edit, so that way whenever you go to the production, you already know exactly what you need to shoot, and it's all about plugging back in after that. This is the most kind of effective, proven way that we have done these proof of concepts, and it makes the director very comfortable with doing these types of projects, and understand the different ways and different techniques that you can do in the Screenlife format, because the proof of concept is kind of the opportunity for you to play with the format, to try out new styles, to figure out the right approach for this project. Like, in Unfriended's case, when we did the proof of concept, we saw that it works better if it was a just full screen static movie playing in real time, whereas searching was more of a cinematic approach with, camera zooming into the one notification, that one click, to make you focus on that one specific moment. And once you do edit all the whole proof of concept, and you plug in all of that, right? It it doesn't restrict your Screenlife doesn't format doesn't restrict you from doing more changes, right? Because you if you film, even after you film the proof of concept and you go back to the edit and you realize that, oh, I want to change something, you still can, because of the possibility of our reliance on all of different graphics and interfaces. So we're always able to make those changes and implement those changes. And um, um, so definitely the suggestion would be, and the best approach that we've done so far is make sure you edit your proof of concept first, figure out exactly what works, how does it work, what doesn't work, change whatever you're skeptical about, and then film the other footage that you need to film. Once you plug it in, you'll be able to see that it's a lot better model workflow than filming and then editing after that. That's what we do with our feature films as well. And the way we do them is searching originally was edited first. That we had a cut of 1 hour and 45 minute long of the whole movie. Director filled in the roles for all the characters, which is a bit confusing, I'm not gonna lie, because it was just him playing the role of the father and the mother, the daughter. But it did help us a lot in figuring out exactly how we're gonna shoot the movie, and also to help the cast and the crew also understand what are they seeing on screen, and what are they doing on screen. So we used that cut as reference on set, and we basically placed all the characters or all the actors in front of a screen to be able to see the actions that they are doing on the screen while they're being filmed. um, um, so that's the main points about the proof of concept that I wanted to point out. um, one last thing about the proof of concept is the use of devices, right? One thing that we always struggle with is you sometimes want to tell a story in Screenlife from different perspectives, right? You want to show this person's phone, that person's computer, and that person's iPad. But that doesn't always work, and especially doesn't work in the proof of concept stage, because in the proof of concept stage, if you were to do a trailer and you're trying to show different computer screens, it gets the audience confused whose computer are we watching, and it also gets them confused in a sense that the switch is going to be very abrupt, and you're not going to be able to see whose screen are we on, right? So it doesn't really usually work from what we have done so far. But if you were to do a scene, it's the same thing, because the scene you want to focus on one specific character and show the story from his side. And when you go to the development or the feature version of that film, that becomes a bit more tricky as well, because when you're watching perspective from one person, you get into their world, you understand how it works, you see their screens, you already get adjusted to this new world that you're seeing. But when you see too many screens, it sometimes gets the audience a bit thrown off by, like, where are we at, or where are we, or where we're watching right now. So it's one thing that's definitely worth testing and trying it out. Last movie we did it right now, it premiered at Sundance on Saturday. Was Romeo and Juliet, which was a modern adaptation of Shakespeare's story. And that one used two phones, where we see Romeo's phone and Juliet's phone, and it was very tricky to do, and it took us, I think, 3 months of just testing out different approaches, because we couldn't tell how we were going to transition from one phone to the other. Are we going to show two phones side by side? Are we going to move from one phone to the other? and how are we going to show whose phone are we on? Is it going to be the wallpaper, the background that's going to show the difference between the characters? Is it going to be username? Is it going to be logging in on some social media website? All those questions, you have to go through to figure out the right smooth transition from from the story to the other one. That's the most about POC I want to discuss, and the third thing I want to discuss with you is the business model side of the Screenlife. We originally struggled with selling Screenlife format as a concept back in 2012. Timur went to studios, production companies, tried to sell them the idea for Unfriended. Everyone told them this is the stupidest idea that I've heard. Don't ever do it again. Don't even pitch it to anyone. Just forget about it. That was, from his agents to studio heads to production companies. So it was very, very interesting to see those reactions. But that made Timur even more, of a challenge for him. And he was like, okay, let's try and make this movie ourselves, and then we'll get back to you and show you the movie. So we went ahead and did the movie ourselves. We came back to LA, showed it to everyone in the industry. Blumhouse and Universal partnered with us on the movie, and the movie was a big success. It was on $1 million budget. I got over $64 million in the box office. Additional 70 million in the home entertainment. So that was a huge success. But it wasn't enough to show to the audience and prove to the audience there's more on the industry, that there's more potential there to make more movies, because they saw it like found footage. It works once every 10 years and people might forget about it. And so we were pretty stubborn, and we decided to make more movies in different genres because we wanted to prove that there is an audience for this. There's a world where this people are gonna enjoy this. So we did Searching, and that was the second hit that proved again to the industry and to everyone that this works really well. And Searching was kind of the turning point for the industry to start accepting this format and seeing the potential, right? And since then, we started making more movies in this form with different studios, and we just closed a deal with Universal on 5 movies in that format specifically. And since the pandemic started, all those people that used to shut us down and tell us, no, like this is not gonna work, they all came back last year wanting to do a movie, especially considering the fact that Screenlife allows you to make movies right now in the world that we live in today. So we have come today to a point where we're able to achieve and prove to the industry that there is potential in making these movies, and there is much wider acceptance of them now. And over the past, I think, a year, we've just been getting a large influx of submissions, of concepts, of ideas, and it becomes hard to try and choose which one you want to go with, because all of them are great ideas, all of them are very different, and what usually sells the idea best is having obviously the three main things that I talked about, right? Is the interesting concept with interesting characters that go beyond just very flat characters of influencers or basic characters, we'll call them, and then the very attractive POC that would show off the style and the approach that you're taking with this format. And lastly, is definitely important to have a writer and director attached on the project. Having that kind of a package always helps everyone in the room understand what is the story, who is the team, what is the beginning, middle, and helps you clearly understand what the concept works. And with the budget side of this for these movies, what we try to do is we usually do up to $5 million budget wise for these movies. 1 million is basically the sweet spot, but we have gotten so far up to 5 million, because depending on cast and depending on VFX and whatnot. And we did the movie for Universal. That wasn't $5 million budget, but that was a big sci-fi movie with a lot of VFX that was required, the big budget. But most of those movies are done in $1 million to $2 million range, and it's very lucrative for investors and financiers to see our model, because we have a very low budget and very high return investment. And so far, we've had 3 successful precedents that help build the case that this model works. And even we did a movie where called Unfriended Dark Web, and that was $1 million budget, got around 20 million, which is not what we originally wanted. We wanted to be the same as the first Unfriended, over 64, but it was still not a loss because the budget was so low that any profit is basically a profit. If as long as you take out the marketing budget up. And once you have all of those elements and figure out the right business model for you, and by that I mean there's different ways. As far as if you do $1 million budget, you can get the financing through tax credits, tax incentives. You can get the financing through different festivals, film markets. There's just different ways for you to basically get the financing that you need to finance your film. And this is something that we do every day. As far as what is the for each project, we always think like, what is the best way for us to finance this project, whether it's co-financing with a partner of ours, whether it's a project where we're able to get 20% from a tax credit, then 15% from a festival, then 20% from a fund, and you're able to build all that. Sometimes you get financing 10%, and you're like, okay, we only got 10%, we need 90. But then you go to someone, other financier, gives you 50%, and it becomes a lot easier. But it's definitely what sold most of our investors on all those projects that we're doing right now is the proof of concept, right? Because it's the one visual thing that they're able to show for such a unique format, to be able to sell the concept or the story. And that's script is great, obviously, but it definitely needs something visual to show off to the investors or whoever you're pitching the project to. I see someone has a question regarding protagonist screen. Nick.
Yeah, hi, Majd, nice to meet
Hi.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Just circling back to the protagonist screen stuff, particularly for the proof of concept. Just wondering if your protagonist can go between different screens. So we're not swapping characters, but we're swapping different screens. And if that looks like a clear way forward.
Yeah, that's totally fine. If you're able to switch from the character's computer screen to mobile screen back to, I don't know, his work screen, that works. Yeah, as long as you're able to do the transition smoothly, but it works as long as you don't switch perspectives. If you switch perspectives to entirely different character, that becomes confusing, as you'll have to kind of clearly label it whose computer you're watching.
Cool, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Anyone has questions?
I think Rustam has a hand up.
Yes, I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I had this question, to be honest, after the first blog, but I didn't know how to raise a hand here. So I've just figured it out. And I wanted to ask you, well, you said that while creating a Screenlife movie, the story should go first. Like, we are not supposed to adjust the format to the story, and it should go the other way around. And that's why I have a question about this movie, The Searching. That many of us use as a reference when we pitch our Screenlife projects. So in this movie, it feels like it always goes the other way around. Like, the main character's FaceTime camera is always switched on, even when he's not talking to anyone. And also the shooting from helicopter, which looks really great, but then it turns out to be a news report, so it adds up to a lot of action. And also, when the main character is installing cameras in his brother's house, and just to get his confession, and every time you look at this, I mean, well, that's my personal perception, but you feel like it's just a way to justify the usage of Screenlife format. And I wanted to ask you how we can avoid, how can we avoid this?
Right. So about, thank you for the question. Great question. Searching, it did have those moments, a lot of those moments where you see that, this could have worked better, especially if you just see like him on a computer screen, FaceTime is on, and you see him with a detective, right? There were a lot of those kind of tricks that we had. That's why we try to address all those different, the advice that I gave from the beginning and early stage. Like in the case of, the helicopter shot, it was more of a news footage, right? And that's fine, if you're able to integrate the news footage, integrate other perspectives into the story. There's like, CCTV or something like that, that works, that's normal. But, one thing that doesn't work is which, searching, we saw some of that is, trying to show that, like, let's say there was that scene wherever she logs into the memorial or the funeral of the person, right? And you saw that was a live feed. Yes, that happens, but not very, not very like commonly. And so what the best thing, and that's something that after searching actually is when we decided, okay, we need to make sure that every project we make after searching, because searching was such a big hit, is we want to make sure that every story we tell is just as good or just as, justifiable for the format. And what we do is we always start with, all right, here's the story. Why are we seeing the story on the computer screen? Why is it important for us to see it on the computer screen? Is the character's, life part of the computer screen? Is he a lonely person and he always uses the computer as a window to talk to people online, and that's why we see it on his computer? There has to be a specific reason for us to tie the story to. In Searching's case, it was that he had access to his daughter's computer and he was able to go through all of that. And so it's definitely important always to ask yourself the questions of, why am I seeing on this person's screen? Why do I need to tell the whole story from beginning to end on the character's screen? And anytime you have a scene where you're like, this doesn't sound real, that's when you're like, okay, if I were in this person's shoes, would I be filming this right now, or would I not be filming this right now? Would I be using my computer, or would I be doing something else? And simple example that honestly fixed a big problem in our other project. We have a project about psychological horror about dementia, and in Screenlife. And so that project, we always struggled with, why are we seeing this story told specifically in Screenlife? And we always thought like maybe she is her phone gets taken, or she finds someone else's phone. Like, we're just coming up with just random stuff. And then we came up with an idea, like, what if she's a painter, right? And she paints all of those different sketches of hers on her iPad, right? And so when you go on her iPad, you can have those moments and scares where, she clicks on the undo button and she sees that underneath that, painting, she drew something else that was more creepy, or more sinister. And so uh, just changing the character personality entirely, because we change her from being, a doctor to a painter. It really helped us, solve a lot of our problems in the script and make it clear, why are we seeing her devices, why is she drawing this on her iPad, and all that stuff. So it's definitely a case by case basis, but you need to always make sure you justify your reason to why is this story being told on a computer. I mean, I had one script once where it was a story about a couple that went on a boat and they discovered some monster in the sea, and the whole time they're like filming and they're jumping into the water and with the GoPro cameras and a bunch of other stuff, and it made no sense to why are we seeing this in such a complicated way. Like, I could have just watched this movie in traditional, normal format, and it's would have been great. Like, I didn't need to see this on her computer or her phone screen that goes underwater to show me the monster. It's just like way too complicated. I see there's another question from Andrew Smith.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about licensing for music, and is it essential to have licensing at the proof of concept stage?
We tend to never license anything at a proof of concept stage because it's, we're showing it internally, unless you wanted to show it anywhere online, but internally we're showing it just to, producers, investors, whatever. That's fine to not license it at all. But if you were to publish it anywhere online, then definitely need to license it. But speaking of licensing, just one more thing to add to that. We get that question a lot. Is sometimes every time we release a trailer for our movie, all the comments on YouTube are people like saying that we're being sponsored by Apple and Facebook and Google, and that they're all paying us a lot of money to make these movies. But that's not true. We don't get paid anything by anyone. But the way that works is because you watch all the different big movies and big TV shows, and they always come up with, instead of Google they have Schmoogle, instead of Facebook it's some other book. But in our case, we try to stick to the real interfaces because that's what makes the format work. Because you're not trying to come up with a fictional world for the audience to understand. You're telling them the story in the language that they speak and understand most. And the way that really works is basically Facebook and Twitter and Google and all those big corporations, they're all in the public domain. So we're able to use them without giving their permission to that, right? Even if we're using BBC or Russia Today and all those different publications, we're still able to use them as well, as long as we get a letter from the lawyer that's basically their legal opinion that says that we're protected and that's normal to use these types of logos and likeness. So that's definitely something just to be aware about. Don't try to take a bigger step and come up with an entirely different interface because you don't really have to.
Thank you.
There's a question there from Paul.
Yeah, sorry, it's not Paul, it's Dove. Paul's next to me, so
Yeah, I thought I saw Paul there. There he is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a question, Majd, about filming in like how you film in 4K. We're a traditional film company filming 4K. In terms of filming from the webcams on laptops and so forth, do you film in 4K and then edit it down to look like a webcam, or how do you, in terms of quality of filming for cinema, etc.? Do you film everything in 4K or not?
Yeah. We do definitely film everything in way bigger resolution, right? So we definitely do in 4K or even higher, 6K, and then we just downgrade it in the edit because it gives us the control over the quality, right? And it gives us the control over the light and the different saturation, whatnot. So that definitely helps us with keeping that. If you were to use webcam, then that limits your control, right? You can't brighten the quality, but you can't do much with it. We filmed the series recently, which was about a zombie apocalypse, and most of the shots were in the night, and we filmed it on a red camera just because we wanted to have the full control of the night lighting. And then we just went into the edit and on the color stage just degraded the whole color down to make it look like it was an iPhone camera.
You're right. Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Majd. That's really helpful. Really. Thank you.
I see a question from Jordan.
Hi, yeah. I've just got a question really on the writing side of the Screenlife. I'm tinkering with something at the minute. I'm considering breaking the fourth wall, if you know what I mean, in terms of what's become a narration, from one character in particular. I was wondering, do you have anything like that I can compare to, perhaps, or within Screenlife, or is there anything like that currently?
It's not something we've done before. I know we had a pitch once that was brought to us that had the concept of breaking the fourth wall. That was very interesting, and we were very fans of it. We just didn't like the whole overall story. but we haven't done anything, so far yet in that side. So, unfortunately, I'm not able to show you
Yeah.
much, but definitely would love to have a conversation about that separately.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Okay, well, that was a little run of questions there for a minute. Majd, did you have more to say? You got to the point of talking about
I think
business
that's
models.
most of what I had in mind to say today.
I actually just carrying on from Dove's points. Actually, it was just interesting to know, to visualize what a set looks like for this kind of you're shooting with proper cameras, etc., to create a very small world. I just wondered, like, out of interest, really, what kind of crew numbers are on set? Who's on set? Does it replicate a normal film set in that way? Or obviously, I'm assuming that it's reduced a little bit. It's a bit more skeletal than that, and particularly in shooting within this period of restriction.
Is definitely the short answer is definitely much smaller crew than normal film, right? We probably are able to cut our production crew by a third of the normal films production crew, and that's because everything is very contained, right? And it's also because we're able to film 2 scenes at the same time as well, right? So, for example, when we did Unfriended, we basically filmed the whole movie in 5 days in one house, right? So we put all the actors in different rooms. Each one had his own kind of production design set there, and they were linked in over or linked up over Skype or some other web conferencing software, and that was just a crew of 20 people or 15 people that was there in the house. They were basically running this whole show, and we filmed for 5 days, right? So the crew is always very small, but obviously it depends on the type of project you're doing, because when we did our zombie apocalypse show, we needed a lot of makeup, a lot of extras, and that was more of a 60-80 people crew, right? Which is on the bigger side for a Screenlife project. However, since the pandemic has started, this definitely put this format in a very good spot, because right now we filmed, I think, 3 or 4 features films so far, all remotely from the actors' houses, right? And the way we do this is we basically, and that's how we're doing proof of concepts now as well, because of the limitations with the restrictions and all that stuff. So the way we do them is we send all the equipment and camera equipment to the cast, right? And when we send it to them, it's already rigged, it's already prepared. It's basically like, if it's attached to a laptop or to a phone, and then we walk them through setting it up, so that way they can turn on the camera and the focus and all that stuff, and we have all the crew is as is connected over Zoom. Let's say 20 people, production designer who's guiding the actor to do this, and makeup artist who telling her how to put her makeup, right? And it's obviously more of a learning process for the actors, right? Because they're like doing everything, and it's basically a one-man show. But it definitely works. And so since I think over the past year, all the movies we've shot are just being done remotely, and we either send everything to the cast, or we send the cast to a certain location that's been disinfected, that's been set up, and have all the cameras and everything ready there. But going back to how it was before the pandemic, is definitely a very small crew, 15, 20 people. We we eliminate a lot of the roles that are there, because we don't really need them in our projects. One thing that there was one project that we did, which was called Profile, that Timur directed, and that one was, I think, the one that had more of a standard normal crew, like a normal film would have. And the reason why is because Timur wanted to film this movie in 3 different countries at the same time. And so he had a whole unit in Cyprus, he had a whole unit in London, and he had a whole unit in LA. They were all connected over Skype and filming 3 different actors at the same time, because Timur was very adamant on making sure that the actors are interacting with each other in real time. and that the actors are in their location and their character, right? And the actor that was supposed to be in Syria, in Cyprus, is supposed to play it as is in Syria. And then you have the other actress who was in London, and then the LA crew was basically filming all the extra shots that Timur wanted to film. So that was more of a bigger crew. But to answer your question, it's definitely a much smaller crew of no more than 20 people or 15 people.
Cool, thanks.
Of course. Any more questions?
Can I ask about something that you said about, I think it was Profile you were talking about, and you said that the editing came before the filming?
Yeah, searching, yeah.
Yeah, searching was. I wonder, just take us through that, how that works. It's such a counterintuitive way of making a film.
Yeah, of course. So we had searching. We had a 138-page script, and 138-page script. We already had questions. Like, all right, this movie doesn't feel like it's a 2-hour long movie, but the pages show that it's a 2-hour long movie. So let's try and maybe edit the film and see, because there's a lot of moments that we had in the script that we didn't really know if it worked, because the script has obviously dialogue, but it also has all the actions that we see on screen. That she received an email, and this email should provide some sort of a suspense or some sort of a thrilling moment, but we don't know for sure if it will work or not. And so the director met with Timur, and they decided to do the previs first, to make sure to see if the story works and to understand what's the length of the movie and what needs to be changed, what needs to be modified, and if the story works overall. And so we decided to make the previs. It took them, I think, around 6 to 8 weeks to do the previs, and it was with zooms and all that stuff. So it was a very rough draft or rough cut that we had, and the director filmed himself playing the roles, as I mentioned earlier, of all the characters. He plugged it all into the movie, so it had as if it was real characters. So the runtime of the movie was 1 hour and 45 minutes, and a lot of moments showed that they didn't work at all. There were some scenes that didn't work, some emotional stuff that he wanted to do. And as you remember, in Surging also, there was a very strong emotional in beginning as well, emotional sequence, and that was something that we wanted to test out as well. And so once we had a cut, the director and the editor spent around, I think, 2 to 3 weeks to try and implement more changes and do rewrites on the script. But rewrites were mainly like edit changes. And once they locked that cut, they already knew exactly, okay, this is what we need to shoot. This is what didn't work, that was replaced. This is the footage that we need additionally that we didn't think we needed before because of the previous shot as we needed it. And it was basically our roadmap for the whole film, right? It was basically a whole structure for us to understand, okay, this is the movie. Now we need to figure out how we're going to film all the scenes to make it work properly. And so once we did all of that, we plugged the footage that we shot back in, and we saw that we just needed more of a tightening there and there. But the runtime of the movie before we shot and after we shot didn't change. It stayed at 145 minute mark, right? So all the work that the editor and director put together before they went to shoot and had the 1 hour 45 was great, and they didn't have to change anything later when they went into the final edit. And since then, since we saw that model worked, now all the movies that we film and all the movies that we make and TV series, they all are done on the model of, let's do the edit first and then we go into the production. And the edit is basically the longest part of our production process, because we film our movies no more than 10 days. Unfriended was shot in 5 days, Surgeon was shot in 10 days, Romeo and Juliet was shot in 8 days. So it's always in that frame. And the editing usually takes most of the time, up to 6 months, 6 to 8 months.
Do we have any other questions? So much. Oh,
Hello, Majid.
Hey.
Just one last question. It's about yourself in terms of being a director. What would you say in terms of your, I suppose you started in traditional film format, in terms of your journey in changing over to filming in Screenlife, what advice would you give in your own personal journey from that transition that any new film company is starting in Screenlife format? What was your journey like, and how was it? You know, is there any advice from your personal?
For sure, yeah. Yeah. Before I answer the question, I'll give you a bit of insight about me and my background.
Yes.
I originally I'm half Syrian, half Russian. You know, two of the most critical countries to be a part of in today's world. But I live in the U.S. and in 2015, I was working at South by Southwest, the festival, and Timur came to my desk and he wanted to help with changing his badge to another company name. And that's kind of how him and I started talking, and since then basically the rest is history. I came to work for him, and him and I started working on different projects, and I was consulting on the movie profile for him because it was about Syria and I lived in Syria. So him and I kind of bonded on the profile movie. And so I personally always wanted to be producer and director. But since I started working, you know, with Timur, I mainly have been producing all the projects. You know, kind of directing has become a second priority for me. But I do, you know, I remember the first time at Timur, him and I was talking about my short film that I was doing and about my feature film that I was directing at the time, and him and I had a very long conversation about, you know, the screen life and traditional, and why screen life is a good thing, and him and I were just debating back and forth. But it's what we've seen and what we've been, because we work with a lot of filmmakers, a lot of young, you know, rising filmmakers, and we've seen that the screen life format really has a way to showcase a person's talent, right, with the limitations of the budget, right? Because sometimes you make a movie and it's a great movie, but it's executed very badly because of the low budget, right? You see that the movie was very badly done, but the story is good, and it might have, you know, not shown the true talent of the director, right? It might have, that might have been sacrificed because of the lack of the budget. And so in Screenlife, because of the low budget that you have, and because of more you can get, right? It's definitely a good, very good and very strong starting point of someone's feature or short film background, you know. And so far we've done that with Searching's director, who's it was feature debut for him, and we did now with the Romeo and Juliet movie. It was also the director's first feature. And if you look at the reviews, a lot of people were saying like this was a great way to showcase the director's talent, right? The movie got mixed reviews, but the director's talent was really mentioned numerous times because people were able to see that, and no one said that, oh, it looked cheap or it didn't look real. You know, that never, you raised the question. So it's definitely a good starting point if someone has limitations as far as the budget.
Majid, thank you so much for sharing that.
No, of course, thank you.
Thank you.
Madge, can I just ask, how did Romeo and Juliet go?
Went well, you know. So far we had our screening on Saturday. We got a lot of positive reviews. A lot of people did not expect to see the movie like that because it was very, very different. You know, you're telling the story through different apps that we use, you know, so it's a very modern take. And I think we're gonna start getting offers as well on the movie. So we're discussing internally now what we're gonna do next.
That's great. I'm so excited about that one. I mean, just watching how it's been developed through the photography and the while we've been talking about Screenlife, there's been some amazing imagery that's come out. Which I think, and again, it's like talking about the progression going back to Unfriended. Unfriended, Dark Web, Search and Profile,
Of course.
now Romeo and Juliet. There's sort of a coming of age for all of them, isn't there? The cinematography is actually quite as beautiful as you would expect, you know, from traditional filmmaking. So it's getting more exciting, isn't it?
No, of course, yeah, and in Romeo and Juliet's case as well, you know, it was a very big learning curve for all of us, because you know, since we also had to edit the movie first before we shot it, we had to go through a lot of testings to see what works and how we're gonna tell the story, right? Because we're struggling with, are we gonna use the modern English, or are we gonna use, you know, Shakespeare's English? Are we gonna tell the story on 2 phones or 1 phone? You know, and I think the director had 20 or 30 different beginnings of the movie, right? Because he kept just changing and changing and changing, because he was trying to figure. Although he had a script, but once he got to the edit, he had the liberty of basically changing and trying new approaches. And so that's one thing that's tricky about the Screenlife format, is it could get you down the rabbit hole, right? Is because of the never-ending, you know, limitations of you being able to address changes to your movie, right? Sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it's not, because you're gonna always be working on editing the movie, right? I think that's partially what Timur almost fell into when he was doing Profile, because he just kept getting more ideas every day, and every day he would come to the studio and he'd be like, let's try this idea, let's try this beginning, let's try this ending. You know, at some point we had to tell Timur, like, all right, Timur, like, we need to stop at some point. we can't keep doing more and more of these changes.
Yeah, I'm excited about Romeo and Juliet, but it's the same with everyone that comes out now. It just feels like the more it progresses, the more it becomes like cinematically beautiful. That there's so much about that one I'm dead excited
Right.
about. But
Yeah, yeah.
Luke, you've got a question there.
Yeah, I see a question from
Yeah.
Luke. As a producer, do you feel you spend more time dealing with the business side of things, or are you getting to still be more creative? For me personally, I tend to do both. I do tend to get sucked to do into more of the business side of things, and negotiations and discussing terms and whatnot, which is what I like personally, you know, a lot. Um, but we definitely get to work on both sides, on the creative of the movie you're producing and on the business side of it. Definitely, you tend to spend more on the negotiations and dealing with the day-to-day problems that you're gonna be dealing with. But part of my day-to-day, you know, job is sending notes on scripts and coming up with creative ways to solve problems in the script, right? So it definitely goes both ways.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about, just as you were saying at the end, talking about when doing the proof of concept and having a writer and director in a team?
Yeah.
And that was a much easier way to explain to people how the project would work. And that seems to be the one part of traditional filmmaking that kind of crosses over into Screenlife. Then that what you're trying to put together is a pitch that includes you're saying this is the director's vision, this is the writer, this is the creative team. That bit kind of doesn't change in Screenlife.
Yeah, I mean, with Screenlife, you know, one thing is, you know, part of the reason why we do proof of concepts for us as the company is because we want to also see the director's capability to do movie in Screenlife, right? Because, you know, not everyone gets the format, right? Some people are just don't understand it, and you know, met people who were like, okay, I trying to do this, it just didn't work because it just makes no sense. How I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna do that, you know. So like some people struggle with that. So whenever we do proof of concept, is definitely that stage is the stage where we see, okay, you know, we have a strong director, we have a strong writer for us to be able to go and confidently pitch this to someone or show this to someone with having some strong proof of concept, right? But whenever if the director doesn't, you know, isn't able to do much, and for the most part, you know, from our experience, directors come to us themselves and they're like, all right, I wasn't able to wrap my head around it. It doesn't happen often. I think it happened like twice, but it doesn't happen all the time. But definitely that's kind of a one thing that we sometimes get to revisit if the directors struggle with the approach, right? But so far it's been very easy, very smooth, and when it comes to also the Screenlife format is it's very flexible, right? And it's lets you try different ways and do different approaches, do different styles. It's just a matter of if the person gets it or doesn't get it.
So we are setting off in this course now for the next few weeks of people developing their proofs of concept, and we've had that whole set of pitches last week, and we've got about we've got 8 weeks to go to come up with final proofs of concept. What sort of things should we be thinking about in those 8 weeks? What sort of things can we try out, and what might we experiment with, and what shouldn't we be tinkering with at this point?
Okay, yeah, great question. For proof of concept, it's good to have obviously to have the story of your film first, right? To at least know the beginning, middle, and end of where to be able to pull out some scenes that you want to show in your proof of concept. But one important thing about the proof of concept is if you were to do a trailer, right, and you write a script to that basically lays out that trailer, it for the most part it never works with having a script for a trailer, right? Like I think we've done this 7 or 8 times, and we would get a script that's like 5 pages long for a trailer, and the trailer would end up being 5 or 6 minutes long, right? Or it would be 4 minutes long, which is a very long and kind of a too dragging of a trailer. So what we end up doing is for trailers we do more of outlines, right? More of outlines and beats that kind of lay out exactly like how you see or what parts you want to show in your proof of concept, and then the editor would work with the director in trying to find the right approach to do this trailer, right? That's what we've proven for us is definitely works to edit the trailer more if you have an outline rather than script, but script definitely helps at least for you to know like what dialogue would each one say, right? But if you were to edit the proof of concept first, then it's fine to have an outline, and then when you have a fully edited proof of concept before you shoot what you need to shoot, you can have the script written for production purposes. That's first note. Second note, it's definitely about the perspective changes in the proof of concepts. Definitely think about the type of scenes you want to show in your proof of concept. Never try to show as much camera shots as possible, as much video that we can see. It's definitely important to try and show different Screenlife moments of someone typing or clicking or whatever to understand clearly that, oh, I needed to see that was needed for me to understand why this story is being told that way, right? Because that's what investors number one question, studios number one question is, why are we telling the story in this format? And the proof of concept needs to clearly explain that. That's what the Searching's proof of concept does. When you watch it, it clearly lays out for you and explains to you why the story is important to be told in that format specifically. And definitely make sure that once you have the proof of concept, you're have a treatment as well that has the whole story written of the main beats written. I would love to help you guys with proof of concept as well. So if anyone needs help with looking at material or any advice or anything of some sort, I'm happy to review anything or discuss with someone individually as well. That's always a favor. We would love to help with anyone that's interested.
Okay, you're booked. I'm going to ring you
for the
tomorrow.
rest of the 8 weeks.
We've got 18, 19, maybe even 20 on the books at the moment. I'm going to send them over to you as soon as we're done.
Sounds great. Excited.
So where are we now? We're on 6:10, so we've kept you for a very long time. But Madge, that was brilliant. That was really, really helpful. Especially because of where everyone is right now. We have got some really great stories. Um, and actually working through them one by one. I may well get in touch with you over the next week or so, just to talk to you about a couple of them. There are some wonderful things. The hope is that we're going to get all of them made. But what you've just made really clear to me there is, attached to every participant on the accelerator course is a very small budget, for them to be able to make their proof of concepts. And we were thinking about, maybe they're going to spend it on licensing, or they can spend it on actors, or they can spend it on software or whatever it is that they need. But by the sounds of it, actually they need very little to be able to make the proof of concept, because the proof of concept is coming to us. We're going to actually look at the story. I'm sure that you're going to work with us and Timur and Maria to scrutinize them a little bit further anyway. But it's really good to know that you can just crack on with it. You can just really get on with it, and especially doing the edit first, and then filling in them little bits. Because I've had a couple of scripts over already where I'm thinking that these are just good to go. We should just do it. Just get it done. I mean, I think tonight's been really useful in terms of the practicalities of everything. How just do it. Just do it, and let's look at it at the end. So thank you very much for that. I mean, has anybody else got anything to ask?
Got a quick question. Been squeezing a question from Chris just before we have a break. Chris.
Hi, I'm really sorry. I work till 6, so I do apologise if this has already been covered in your talk earlier. My question was just regarding different genres and how that should be tailored in a proof of concept. So, for example, what I want to write is sort of more comedic based. So is it better to kind of show off some dialogue and visuals which are of the tone of the piece, or is it better to try and sell the actual narrative and hit those story beats in the proof of concept?
Great question. That's something that we deal with every day on proof of concepts, and funny you mentioned it, because we have a movie that's a comedy film that we're doing proof of concept on right now, and the director right now is trying to figure out how to show those funny beats at the same time tell the story, right? And the struggle in that is he's trying to show those funny beats through not only FaceTime or webcam camera, but also through those different beats of sending a message to someone, going on Google, I don't know, uploading a picture, right? And trying to find humor in that as well to help the whole story overall, right? Because if you do that, right, and if you show in your proof of concept both the narrative side and those different funny beats, it automatically explains that this is definitely a story that's worth telling in this format, right? And it's a story that is clearly and understandable. Why am I seeing this told in such a way? So definitely would want to have those narrative beats that tell the overall story, but definitely would be great to show examples of those different moments, that the thriller or the horror or the comedy moments that work best. Another example that we did recently was we did the zombie apocalypse series I was mentioning about, and the director came up with this very simple idea. When you turn on the iPhone's camera app, you see that focus box, that orange focus box that tries to detect the person's face, right? And so we had a scene in the show where the girl is filming in her phone. She's trying to use flash at night to try and see if there's zombies somewhere around her, right? And so as she tries to move her phone left and right, she doesn't see anyone because it's dark, but she sees the box appearing on the screen, detecting someone moving and getting closer to her, right? That immediately added emotion of scary emotions, like, oh, this is creepy, right? When it was just you had that box that was detecting someone's face, right? So it wasn't a lot, but it really worked, you know. So those kind of things really help to sell the concept and the format.
Cool, thank you.
Of course.
Lovely, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Maj, for that. I think we've kept Maj long enough. He's been very kind. He's offered to come back, which is wonderful and very generous of him. Thanks so much for that. I'm sure we will carry on the conversation after the break as well, in which we'll come back when we have Nick Connor, who's with us again. He's going to have a chat, and we're going to do some work in the breakout groups on the proofs of concept as well in the second half. Shall I suggest now we come back at 6:30? Have a break, have a cup of tea, come back at 6:30. We'll see you then.
That's good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice meeting you.
Thanks, Madge. That was
Thanks, Madge.
brilliant.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.